Let's be real for a second. Paul Walker. Yes, Paul Walker wasn't just an actor who played a car guy. He was a car guy. The dude lived and breathed cars, not just on screen, but in real life too. And unlike a lot of celebrities who just buy flashy exotics to flex, Paul actually drove his cars. He wrenched on them. He took them to the track. He was one of us. That's why when his personal car collection went up just a couple years ago, it wasn't just a bunch of Ferraris and Lamborghinis sitting around collecting dust. It was raw, high-performance, JDM and Euro-infused lineup of true drivers' cars, plus a couple of surprises. A total of 21 cars, trucks, and motorcycles that hit the auction block at Barrett-Jackson, and when the dust settled, this legendary stash raked in a staggering $2.3 million. That's right, Paul's personal taste in cars was so good that people shelled out huge money just to own a piece of it. What exactly was his collection, and what did each of the cars sell for? Let's take a deep dive into Paul Walker's insane secret stash. Starting with, if you ever needed proof that Paul Walker was a real enthusiast, just look at his obsession with the BMW M3. And I don't mean that he had one M3. Oh no, Paul had 7 of them. And not just any M3s, he had some of the cleanest, rarest examples ever made. Let's start with the E30 M3, a car so legendary, it's literally known as God's chariot. Paul had 2 of these bad boys, both in Alpine white. The first was a 1988 E30 with 32,000 miles, which ended up selling for a whopping $165,000. The real gem, a 1991 E30 M3 with just 7,600 miles on the clock, practically brand new. That one sold for an absolute insane $220,000. And then we have the real unicorns, Paul Walker's 5, yes, count them 5 E36 M3 lightweights. Now, the E36 M3 is already an incredible car. I've owned a couple. They're ideal. But the lightweight version, that's next level. BMW only made 126 of these total, and somehow Paul had 5 of them sitting in his garage. All Alpine white, because that's the only color they came in, all in pristine condition, and all insanely desirable. These things were the ultimate track-focused M3s. No radio, no AC, no sunroof, and about 220 pounds lighter than a standard E36 M3. Just pure, raw driving bliss. So how much did they sell for? The entire batch of 5 were bought for 1.2 mil. The lowest mileage example going for $385,000, a record price at the time. And honestly, considering how rare these things are, that was probably a steal. The market on M3s has grown significantly just in the past few years since these were auctioned off, and I'm sure that these M3s would have fetched a ton more if they were sold today. But this isn't about the money, really. It's about seeing what Paul's personal taste was all about. And if you want to find any of the cars that he had in his collection or any other ideal or not ideal car for cheap, we'll use the pinned first comment via Auto Tempest. I've linked to everything in here, so you can go check it out, see how cheap you can get one. Next. Now you probably think of Paul Walker as a JDM guy, big turbos, high revving engines, and all that good stuff. I mean, there were only a few times throughout the FNF franchise we saw him driving an American car, but off the screen, the man wasn't a JDM only kind of guy, and he certainly dabbled in the American muscle world a bit. Case in point, there were 3 Chevrolet project cars that went under the hammer at the 2020 auction that most people would never guess were in his garage. First up, a 1963 Nova wagon. It wasn't in great shape, ripped up seats, faded paint, but that just meant it had potential. Someone saw that vision and scooped it up for $18,700. Then there was the 1964 Chevelle wagon, which was in slightly better condition and went for $19,800. Both of these were project cars that Paul was working on with his business partner, Roger Rodas, before his passing. Also, can we get a round of applause for Paul's appreciation of wagons? We need more of that in America today, folks. But the real showstopper, a 1967 Chevy Nova Custom Coupe, fully built by year 1. A slate gray paint, a GM 5.3 liter V8 under the hood. This thing was immaculate and exactly the kind of build that I would go for if I had this generation Nova. And the price reflected that, selling for a really solid $60,500. But most of the cars that we've covered so far are not exactly the daily driving type, right? I mean, if you had a handful of the rarest M3s ever built plus some 50-year-old muscle cars, you probably wouldn't be driving them every day, which is why not everything in Paul's collection was a track weapon or a project car. He also had a handful of practical everyday vehicles. Take, for example, his 1995 Ford Bronco Eddie Bauer edition. Hey OJ, This thing was mint, low miles, black and tan paint, and it even still had the original car phone inside it. It ended up selling for $73,700, which is still a crazy number considering how much Broncos have shot up in value since then. He also had a 2003 Ford F-250, a 2004 GMC Sierra, and a 2006 Toyota Tundra, because hey, he probably knew it could go a million miles if he needed it to. Now, this is where things get wild, because Paul had a 2013 Ford Mustang Boss 302 race car, fully built, not street legal, and gifted it to him by a friend right before he passed away, and thus, it had never been raced. This thing was a 400 plus horse monster, 6-speed manual, track-built slayer, and it went for $95,700 at auction. And then we have the 2009 Nissan 370Z from Fast 5. This car was the car from the movie, and the one he fell most in love with. This is why it's also the only one in Paul's collection that featured the name of his foundation, Reach Out Worldwide, on the livery. It had Volk TE37 wheels, hand-cooked tires, Recaro seats, and a full built track setup. It also went for a record-breaking $105,000, making it the most expensive 370Z ever sold at the time. And of course, we can't go talking about Paul Walker's collection without mentioning this. Here it is, a true RB26 powered all-wheel drive Godzilla. This 1995 R32 Nissan Skyline GTR was not just some garage queen, it was built for racing. Need proof? Check out the interior, completely stripped, roll cage, fire extinguisher, RPF1 wheels, and endless brake calipers. That's a track day setup if I ever have seen one. This was 100% his car for serious driving, and it ended up selling for $100,000. And honestly, if that thing went to auction today, I bet it would go for double, even triple that. And though that completes the 21 car collection from 2020, there's one more that probably pulls at the heartstrings the most, because 3 years later, in 2023, his iconic 2000 Nissan Skyline R34 GTR from Fast and Furious 4 went under the hammer. This wasn't just any Skyline, it was the car Paul Walker personally selected and modified to his exact standards for him to film with. Imported from Japan by Kaizo Industries, this thing was built to perfection. They sourced the correct RB26 engine, installed a Turbonetics front engine intercooler, Nismo lowering springs, a custom roll cage, and a Nismo version 2 bumper, all at the request of Brian O'Connor himself. Notably, this was the only genuine GTR used in the film. The rest were modified GTT models. He really wanted to show off his car guy cred with this one, and the result, a jaw-dropping sale price of $1.357 million at an auction house in Brussels. And what's crazy is that after filming, the car faced legal challenges, including seizure by the US Customs, before eventually finding its way to Germany, where it remained for over a decade until the 2023 auction. And thank God it eventually was saved. I mean, this car, though it's not the original silver and blue R34 from the OG film, shows at the very least how important the GTR was to his legacy and his personality. I love how this blue beauty looks so understated yet aggressive, and in all honesty, I would rather own this one than the silver and blue car. We can argue in the comments if you want, but at the end of the day, this wasn't just some random car auction. This was Paul Walker's personal collection, a true reflection of his passion for cars, driving, and racing. And the best part, the entire $2.3 million from the auction went to his foundation, Reach Out Worldwide, an organization that provides first response aid during natural disasters. Even after his passing, Paul was still making a difference. So, what do you think? If you could take one of these cars home, which one would it be? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like buttons and subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and check out these Ideal vids over here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal. We'll catch you next week, and promise me one thing, keep living the Ideal lifestyle.